Netscape IPO, the excitement that we had with what we did with ColdFusion, and then what's actually happened and continued to happen with CF over the years is just is far better. And as is proof by everybody being here tonight and joining us. So we're here in Macromedia's offices in Newton. We're also broadcasting out via Breeze to over 20 ColdFusion user groups throughout the world. As well as a lot of desktops here and there of folks tuning in. So welcome to everybody online, welcome to everybody here. For those of you who are online, here in Newton we've assembled a great menagerie of objects d'art from ColdFusion's past. I'm wearing my official, let me get the vest here. Anyone know where this vest was from? Remember?
That's
from DevCon?
That's DevCon 2005.
No, 2000. DevCon 2000, yeah. So what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be taking a little bit of time to sort of walk through the past of ColdFusion, celebrate where ColdFusion's been, celebrate where the product is today, and moving forward. We've got a great number of really wonderful folks from the past and from the future of ColdFusion who have joined us today. We're really delighted to have everybody. We've also asked a lot of folks throughout the ColdFusion community to write in with their own personal stories about the product. So we're going to share some of those with you as well. But mostly we're here just to celebrate ColdFusion and the technology that's touched so many lives. So before we get started, what I'd like to do is invite our first special guest up to talk a little bit about where ColdFusion is today and where we're heading within our corporate family. If you'd welcome me joining me in welcoming Stephen Elop, the CEO of Macromedia.
This working? Everyone can hear me okay? Feedback. I think that's you. Turn that off. Can everyone still hear me? No? Okay, that's better? Great. So first of all, on behalf of Macromedia, I want to welcome everyone who's here and around the world to this great event. We've got customers here, we've got employees, we've got a full lineup of former employees and founders and all sorts of great people here, which is just fantastic. So I'm really glad that everyone's come out and joined us here. I got to tell you, it feels a little bit weird to be going through this right now. So it's the 10th anniversary of ColdFusion. If you think back 5 years when we were celebrating the 5th anniversary of ColdFusion, we were going through this little merger thing, you know, Macromedia, Allaire, and all that was going on. Well, here we are 5 years later on the 10th anniversary, and we're doing it again. Macromedia, Adobe, and all that's taking place. So one of the thoughts that was on my mind is like, why does this keep happening? Like what? And even before that, JRun. I was talking to folks earlier about JRun, 99. I mean, it keeps happening. And so I tried to think about that. And for me, it really came down to sort of two common themes, you know, through these different mergers and things that happen. One is that all of these companies, JRun, Allaire, Macromedia, Adobe, have as a common theme the provision of technology that makes it possible for our customers to do things that they couldn't possibly do any other way. I mean, that's been the story of ColdFusion right from the very beginning. Try and build a web application when it first came out without ColdFusion. You couldn't do it. It was impossible. ColdFusion made that possible. Today, with the latest releases of ColdFusion, try and simply build an application that takes advantage of SMS and so forth. How do you do it? You turn to ColdFusion. I mean, that's what people are doing. So that's one of the common themes. The other common theme amongst all of these companies and the products and the things that we do is the fundamental impact that we've had on people's lives. If you think about the fact that there are groups all around the world participating tonight, if you travel on the road and visit customers and see today the growing number of people still whose lives are being changed by technology like ColdFusion. I mean, it's really changed the course of the web. It's changed the course of individuals' lives, including my own, including now people at Adobe and so forth. It's pretty amazing. And that's a common theme that ripples through all of this. And it's something that carries on. Now, going through this type of change, and hopefully we won't do it again on the 15th birthday of ColdFusion. We'll try and avoid that. But, you know, sometimes it's hard. Like, if you think back 5 years ago when we all came together, different companies, and everyone was saying, what's going to happen to ColdFusion, you know, all that type of thing. You know, it was a tough time. Both Macromedia and Allaire were right on the brink of what was the biggest retreat in technology history. The bursting of the internet bubble, it was ugly. And so it was really painful to sort of work our way through that. But look at what's come out the other side. ColdFusion MX7. Everybody using it? Everyone's okay? Definitely using it? Great release? Okay, excellent release. Well, let me tell you about it from a business perspective. So we've had 2 quarters so far of ColdFusion MX7 being in the market. And they are the best results we've had since the internet boom. I mean, fantastic. Growing revenue amounts, it's just amazing. So for those of you who are sort of saying, well, you know, ColdFusion, is it going anywhere? What's happening? It's going strong. It's not going strong. It's going stronger and stronger. That's what's happening up there. So when you contemplate going into yet another little bit of change with Adobe and all that type of thing, going into something like that from a position of strength and growth and success is a wonderful place to be. So in the context of Adobe, ColdFusion has a very bright future. Good things ahead. I'll tell you one story. David Mendels, who couldn't be here tonight, who works here in the Newton office with the ColdFusion team, amongst others, was recently in Ottawa with one of the Adobe enterprise teams. They do a lot of work with this PDF thing and Acrobat and all sorts of stuff. And he sat down, a couple of tags, you know, CF document, I'm sorry if I get this wrong, CF document equals something about PDF, hello world, boom. And there was a PDF document programmatically developed or generated out of ColdFusion. The Adobe guys go, holy, it's like, how do you do that? We can't do that. And so, you know what? It carries on, and the tradition will continue. So very bright future ahead. The final comment I want to make on behalf of Macromedia, because I was on the Macromedia side when the companies came together, is don't underestimate the impact that Allaire has had on Macromedia. Not only the product itself, the customers, the community, but also very much things like selling. ColdFusion and Allaire brought to us the ability to actually interact with customers in the community in a very direct way. Macromedia had never done that before. Today, we're doing it like we never did it before, and it's because of what came into our combined community, you know, through that acquisition and situation. It was tremendous. Another example, we have all sorts of new server products, which are great. Guess where the server expertise, that understanding of reliability and so forth came into our company? It happened right here in Newton, and it continues to happen right here, which is great. So on behalf of Macromedia, we are very excited about 10 years. We look forward to another great 10 years and want to thank all of you for participating in that from the very beginning to what we're doing today. So thank you very much. I'll pass it back again.
Thank you so much. So let's begin our trip down memory lane, shall we? A little sort of view through where ColdFusion has been and how it's touched people's lives and how various people who have really been passionate about changing the way we look at the web and changing the way that we build internet applications and how we deal with customers and how we can find ourselves with new skills and so forth. All of the people that you're about to meet have contributed to that in one way or another and really touched a lot of lives. So the first person I'd like to bring up is both one foot in the past, rich tradition with being involved with ColdFusion pretty much from the early days, and continues to be out there evangelizing for ColdFusion, talking about it, visiting amazing amounts of customers, spending an unheard of amount of time on the road, as well as writing books, writing articles, answering email messages, doing interviews. It's really incredible the amount of energy and passion that this person brings to the ColdFusion community. So I'd like to introduce our senior evangelist, Mr. Ben Forta.
Thank you. Is this on? Yeah. There you go. Thanks. Good to be here. It's exciting. 10 years. How fast they grow up. I promise not to cry. In all seriousness, it's really good to be here celebrating ColdFusion's 10th birthday. And it's a good time to take a look back at what we've done in 10 years and what it really is coming in the future. The truth is, ColdFusion, ColdFusion 10 years ago really helped define the space we are all in right now. And along the way, ColdFusion has consistently innovated, consistently set the bar for what everybody does in this space. I mean, think back. ColdFusion 1, introducing tag-based development. Back then it was DBML. A tag-based programming language, which at the time people laughed at and thought was insane. And pretty much everything now is tag-based. It was definitely visionary ahead of its time. ColdFusion 2, the first server. ColdFusion 3X, introducing an IDE. ColdFusion 4, a bit of a rough era, but enterprise feature set. ColdFusion 5 was the maturing of the language. ColdFusion 6, incredibly important, a brand new architecture that is ColdFusion as we know it today. And ColdFusion 7, the current release, which is undoubtedly the most customer-driven version of ColdFusion since day one. So constantly, consistently innovating and setting the bar. And it's great. We've touched a lot of people, and we regularly hear from people telling us how ColdFusion has changed their lives and what it's done for them. And from day one, ColdFusion's job has been just that. Its job has been all about simplicity, about eliminating complexity, about productivity, about just getting the job done. But there's a note of caution here, because hearing Tim's intro words and Steve's intro words, this is not a history lesson. I don't want to spend the next hour and reminisce and talk about where ColdFusion's been and leave at the end of the day and think, wow, we had a great past. Because it's really not about the past, it's about what comes next. For 10 years, ColdFusion, with the help of those who created it, the Macromedia, the Allaire team, customers, partners, and the entire community, has really helped write history. But we're just getting started. And the proof of that really is ColdFusion 7. Stephen mentioned some of the success of ColdFusion 7. Let me give you a couple more specifics. I've got too many senior Macromedia people there, so no real specifics. And I'm not going to talk about this quarter at all, Steve, I promise.
Good. Okay. You're clear.
If you were not here. Last quarter was the first quarter ColdFusion shipped. And to put that into perspective, ColdFusion shipped mid-quarter, so we only had half the quarter of actually shipping ColdFusion product. And it was one of the best ColdFusion quarters in close to half a decade. It did incredibly well. But just to put that in perspective, we shipped, by the end of the quarter, we shipped 14,000 servers. That's a whole lot of servers. That's incredible. Yeah. You look at the breakdown of the numbers, and lots of upgrades, and upgrades are always also great, but a significant portion, I forget the exact percentage, but a significant portion weren't upgrades, they were brand new sales. We're getting tons of new customers as well. So, over the years, year in, year out, we hear, is ColdFusion still around? Is it dead? Is the product still viable? And absolutely, it's more viable than it's ever been. And the current quarter, I'm not going to talk about the quarter, Steve, I promise, don't look so nervous. But we're also doing very well, and ColdFusion 7 continues to do extremely well. Tim and I were at CF United a couple of weeks ago, and I asked for a show of hands from the audience. How many of you have currently upgraded to ColdFusion 7? And over half the hands in the room went up for a product that's only a few months old. I was in Texas at a user group last week, same thing, half the hands went up. I was in London a few weeks ago, and I asked the same question, and 2/3 of the hands in the room went up. So a product in 4 or 5 months to see that kind of upgrade, that's the kind of upgrade most software companies would kill for. And people love this product, and they're passionate about it and still using it. And that's really what I want to take out of tonight, using this chance to celebrate what ColdFusion has done, literally changing lives over the last 10 years. We're just getting started. Happy birthday, ColdFusion. We have lots more lives to change.
Yeah, Ben gets to stay up here. I think what we'll probably do through the evening is we'll invite folks to come up, and then we'll just gradually let everybody stay seated up here, and we can chat a little bit and set them at each other and have some technical debates or something. So, so Ben mentioned ColdFusion really changing lives, and like I mentioned before, we did ask, made a call out to the public to tell us your stories. Let us know how you got to hear about ColdFusion. What was your involvement with CF in the early days? What kind of applications were you building? How did it change your professional life or your personal life? How did it, cure your psoriasis and liver problems? And we get a lot of these stories. So I printed out a bunch. I'm going to share them, with you throughout the evening. And then I'd also like to take an opportunity to ask some of the folks here too. So I'll read the first one since Ben was up here. This comes from Tom Chambers, a software engineer in Georgia, who writes, in late 1995, I was searching for a way to easily do database queries for my website. At around 2 a.m. one night, I decided to post my needs on a few news groups. After about an hour I posted, I received an email from someone who suggested I FTP into a site using only an IP address and download a zip file and follow the instructions. I'm sure this was a very, very legal site. And this was intended to be the distribution method of the software. When I unpacked and zipped, I found ColdFusion version 1.5, and within an hour, I was converting all of my real estate sites over to ColdFusion connected to an Access database. I've been using ColdFusion ever since. Oh, and by the way, the person who emailed me was some guy named Ben Forta. I was able to later meet Ben at DevCon in '99 and thank him personally for turning me on to this awesome technology. Thanks again, Ben. So even then, he was online at 2 a.m. He's still online at 2 a.m. bugging me with requests to help out with various things and add features to the product days before we ship. So obviously, Ben continues to impact the development of the project, of the product, and solicit your feedback, most importantly. So let's chat for a bit about you. So tell us about your background in CF and how you first found the product and a bit of your history with it.
Hi, I was born in... I actually discovered ColdFusion by accident, thankfully, at exactly the right time. I was working for a software company that went through yet another acquisition. didn't like who I was being acquired by and left, and this is mid-90s, so what do you do mid-90s? You launch your own .com and you plan to go public, right? So we had this brilliant idea that stuff shouldn't be static. We've got to have data-driven websites, and nobody was doing that then. The only option there was Perl, which was basically counters and guestbooks and not much else. And so I spent about a month digging in the bowels of ODBC drivers and C, writing my own interface to be able to talk to the databases, and then saw a little blurb. I think it was PC Week, that little PC Week story. Now it's eWeek. Small paragraph about a company had this product called ColdFusion, downloaded it, tried it, kind of liked it. It was okay, but it wasn't quite complete, and fired off this long email went to Jeremy and Jay at the time of stuff that I think you should. I said, you guys are on the right track, but these are all the things that are wrong. And I've been basically doing that ever since, I think. Yeah, nothing's changed. And then launched actually one of the very first public, highly visible sites on ColdFusion 1.5. You know, like the guy with the shaver, he liked it so much he didn't buy the company, but I went to work for the company.
Excellent. And for those of you who don't know, Ben does a little bit of writing on the side, being by far, in a way, the most important author and book series for ColdFusion. So tell us about the books. How did that start?
By mistake. Thanks to another former product called Allaire Forums. There was somebody at Macmillan at the time had this brilliant idea that they need to do a book about emerging technologies, and posted messages on just about every board they could find anywhere. This product you're working on, not knowing what it was, is kind of cool. Maybe you should do a book in it. Who's interested? And 6 of us responded on the forums immediately saying, hey, sure, I'll talk to you. And I was the first one to respond and the first one to call. So they said, okay, have you done this before? And I said, no. They said, do you want to? I said, yeah, I guess I think so. And they asked me to write the book. And it was a lot of fun. The first book was in ColdFusion 2, and in many ways, it helped ColdFusion 2 gain the publicity it needed. And the two just kind of grew with each other. I was literally in the right place at the right time.
And how long was the first book?
About 800 pages.
Oh, so that's pretty long. Everybody complains that you know, we have to keep an eye on the features that we add to the product because Ben's books are getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And,
yeah, we've actually had a suggestion to put wheels and extendable handle in them.
Generally, usability for boosting up infants and toddlers.
Right.
Well, yes. Excellent. So stay up here. Don't go anywhere. We're going to invite some more folks from ColdFusion's long and illustrious past up, and wanted to keep you there so that you can continue to comment. So the next person I'd like to introduce up here is really the father of the product, right? The father of all of this. The person whose name was on the building when I came aboard. I would tell you my own personal story, but that'll be for the later version of the broadcast. But the person whose name was above the door, together with his brother, who really drove the development of this product, who would love to come up and sort of learn about the beginning, JJ Allaire. So have a mic, have a seat. So fill us in. So it's 1995. Give us a little bit of what was happening. And how we
there's a lot of stories that you probably won't get, you know, but 5% of them. But if you ask the right questions, you get a lot of really good stories.
All right. So tell us just a little bit about where the idea came from then first.
Well, I just want to say first of all that it's amazing. As someone who works on software products, it's amazing to create a product that is so vital after 10 years. It's stunning. It's something you could never hope for, you could never expect, you could never plan. And to see the excitement and the vitality and the growth after 10 years there could be no greater reward working in software. So,
and did you ever imagine that at the time?
No, never. So, I mean, and that is to thank everybody here and every customer who believed in the product, who worked on the product, who's excited and who's continued to be excited about the product. It's unbelievable, and I'm sure it's rewarding for all of us the same way. But just to create something and then to see it become this, and to be so excited about what's even to come is fantastic. So that's just great.
Excellent. So take us back a little bit and explain what got this started.
Where did this all come from?
Yeah.
It came from probably similar to Ben. Actually, I was digging around in the bowels of ODBC and C and working on a newspaper website in Minneapolis with Jeremy. And really just observed that a lot of the work you did in building a dynamic website in C was just slogging data back and forth in a very predictable way. And I was interested in development tools at the time, and I was kind of interested in pushing myself to see if I could make something that that people would like in this domain, and really was excited about the web, and so just really built the initial version of ColdFusion as a way to help, you know, Jeremy and, you know, as it turned out, both of my roommates and a bunch of my friends build websites and do it easily and make it like magic. You know, that was the whole concept. And so that's where it started, just a community of people in Minneapolis who were trying to build dynamic websites, and I slogged through the C stuff just like Ben, and I said, we're going to make this like magic.
So then when did you decide that this was becoming a company, or this was becoming...
Yeah, we didn't know. It was, it was really just build the product. That was the only concept at the start. And then the product did fairly well the first couple months. And so there was actually money available to hire people. And so...
And did you have a feel for who your customers were back then? I mean, were there, did you get feedback from people who were out there?
Well, let me tell you, okay, first of all, Jeremy was basically a customer. He's building all kinds of applications. Both of my roommates were customers, okay? Okay, all of my...
So the feedback loop is fairly
all of my office mates, where I was actually, we didn't have our own office. I was, you know, everybody around me, you know, was a customer. Pretty much, I was just with customers all the time, so we didn't need a lot of fancy research techniques at that time. Now it's a little more challenging when you got hundreds of thousands of customers all over the world. But you know, it was just running to you at the coffee machine. And, right. You know, this is annoying me. Okay, well we can fix that. You know, so really, and it works great.
Much the spirit that we're trying to do.
I highly recommend that as a product development methodology if you can pull it off. The roommates thing is probably a little tough, you know, if you're already married, but you know, so.
Although it does feel like we live with our customers from time to time.
Yeah, well, you should. You should.
So then this was not in the Boston area.
Right.
Right. This was so as the company sort of formalized was when you came back out this way.
No, we had a company in Minneapolis, and we were going along. And you know, really, what happened was we knew we had something fairly special. It was the feedback from people was, "Wow, this is terrific." And then all of a sudden the industry started, there's momentum in the industry around dynamic websites. And I can remember very clearly, like Steve Jobs went in front of, he got, like, it was like a Newsweek or something. He said, web objects is like, we're the only technology that can do this, you know, and this is magic, and we can do it and nobody else can, and we're like years, decades ahead. And I was like, no one knows about us. I mean, you know, it's just the people that found us, and why? Why, you know, and it's clearly there was more to it than just build a mousetrap. You know, there was some of that worked, you know, and thanks to Ben and other folks, that worked to a point, but we said, you know, we really need to boost this up a little bit, because it seems like there's a lot of, you know, action. All of a sudden Netscape's entering the space, and Microsoft's entering the space, and wow, we better do something about this. So then we raised money, and all of a sudden we went from like 10 people to 50 in like 2 months or something. So.
But I know that, I mean, certainly for me, and the stories that I hear from customers is, it was that word of mouth, passion-driven
definitely
growth
that worked for us the whole time.
The company was about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
Right, and how did you? Was there a way that you found that, or tapped into that, or you know, today it's formal, it's viral marketing, and
right.
Study this, and here it seems like it just naturally happened.
I don't know. You have to ask some other people on the panel how we did that. I don't know if there's secrets to doing that.
Right,
I think the internet helps if you have a great product and you have customers that tend to talk to each other in some form or fashion. But I can tell you the launch of the product was basically, this was before people were sensitive about spamming news groups. Is I basically went on to Usenet, and I just, every time anybody in Usenet said anything about, I'm trying to connect the database to the, I just replied and said, hey, you know, we got this, you know, ColdFusion, here's the link. You know, I did like 100 of those. And that's how we, you know.
And obviously Ben fell for it, looked like.
Yeah, and that worked out okay.
And he passed it on to this person here and that person, right?
Yes.
Well, that's terrific. So now, just generally, your thoughts on the product as it's grown. Do you still watch the product?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do you follow what we're doing over here still?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you haven't walked away?
Not at all, no. It's great. It's the same kind of philosophy of making magic. Like, let's take a technology and make it like magic. That is, you know, that continues to happen, and that makes me so happy to see that.
It's that we make hard things easy.
That's right.
Really a driving...
it's just a whole mindset that permeates, obviously, the whole product team and everything, so, yeah.
And you're continuing to be involved in technology?
Absolutely, yeah. We have a new company, which I'm not going to plug, but...
Right, well, it's our parties.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to get into that, so, yeah.
All right, well, it's so great to have you here. So stay seated. We're going to invite a couple more people up. Well, let me read a couple more stories, and then we'll keep bringing some folks up and keep building on the story, all right? So this next one from Ben Wakeman, who's the Director of App Development in a company in Georgia. I personally like this one because of the title. His subject in his submission was How ColdFusion Saved Me from the Gutter. So I won't say that happened to me personally. I was talking to Damon Cooper, our Director of Engineering, a while ago, and he said, Tim, there's a rumor about how you came to be in Allaire, and it somehow involves, working with children's relief in Africa, and somehow, getting through the educational process. Completely crazy, wild story. None of which is true. It's a much more boring story. But how ColdFusion saved me from the gutter? Let's find out. Back in 1996, I was still struggling to make a living as a full-time musician when my son was born. I was doing some coffee house tours, teaching guitar lessons, and barely making enough to support myself, much less a family. So needless to say, it was an extremely stressful time, and it seemed like a good time to go looking for a straight job. I think we were all there at one point or another. And one of my guitar students helped me get an entry-level job after giving me a 2-night crash course in HTML. After a couple of months working there, I soon realized that if I was going to make a go of it, I'd have to learn a program which I must confess was not appealing and extremely intimidating until, of course, I met ColdFusion. So now in 3 short years, I've moved up to webmaster and doubled my salary, managing a team of developers when I left to join my current company. So to this day, I believe the life I have and the ability I have to provide for my family would not have been possible if ColdFusion hadn't come along and introduced me to a skill that I never knew I had. Wow, did this sound like an infomercial? Well, it's all true. Happy birthday, ColdFusion. Signed Ben Wakeman. So, I mean, believe it, it sounds kind of hokey, but I do hear these stories a lot when I go out to user groups and conferences and customer sites. You meet people both from technical backgrounds and people from non-technical backgrounds and people with literature majors and art majors, all talking about how they got caught up in this excitement in the early days of the internet and found ColdFusion gave them a unique ability to not only learn it easily, but mature with the technology really well too. So people may not have had a deep computer science background when they started, but they were able to mature as the product matured in what the product was able to do. They sort of grew with it. Along those lines, why don't we invite up another person who was there in the early days helping the product to grow. So I understand employee number 1 in the company, Mr. Charles Teague. Charles, so is this true, employee number 1?
I think, yeah.
The first formal employee?
I guess I was the first formal employee.
So tell us how this happened. Were you teaching guitar in a shop in Minneapolis?
Almost. I wasn't even doing that.
On its way to do it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I actually was looking for a job, and I wasn't having very much success finding it. I just graduated from college. I had a political science degree, and I was trying to get a job any way that would take advantage of my political science background.
This is not sounding like he's selling his skills very well.
No, I was not particularly skilled, and I knew this guy from college named Patrick, and then he knew JJ, and one time I had met JJ through Patrick, and then Patrick said, "You got to talk to this JJ guy. He's looking for some help." And so I think maybe JJ gave me a call, and I met him at a Brugger's in Minneapolis. We talked for a couple hours. We ended up at a bar. We had a beer. And I remember he explained ColdFusion to me, and I said, it sounds like you could make surveys on the web with that. It doesn't sound really very exciting to me. I mean, surveys on the web. What's so exciting about that?
And so
really, what's so exciting about the web?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the web. It's a computer thing,
Right. So I take it you weren't building apps from day one?
No, absolutely not. So what ended up happening is somehow he still said, maybe you should come on and do a little bit of work here. And I remember the big moment for me was when he said, I'll give you $12 an hour to work here. I said, $12 an hour? I mean, I can't even spend that kind of money. So I said, I'm going to work right there. And it didn't take me long, I'll say. I remember it did not take me long to fall in love with ColdFusion because I showed up to work and I sat in the same office with JJ, and he helped me learn ColdFusion. And it wasn't long before I was arriving at work at 8 o'clock. I didn't even have a key to the office, and I'd be sitting on the floor outside the door at 8 o'clock waiting for someone to get in and unlock the door so I could get back in there. and keep that ColdFusion.
Great. So what kind of things did you do as you progressed in being part of the company?
Well, you know, I started out modestly. I answered the telephone.
Boxes to be stacked, you know, there was food to be picked up.
There were some faxes to be sent. There were orders to be taken. I eventually moved up to tech support, and so for customers who worked with ColdFusion 1.0, they may have gotten technical support from me.
Maybe Ben.
And then eventually I ended up working on the web team at Allaire, and then getting into product engineering from there.
So what were some of those early customers like? What were the people that were first finding the product?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, you know, they were excited.
And anybody can
about
type in. You know, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, they were excited about ColdFusion. You know, and they shared their excitement.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I loved about ColdFusion. Is everyone you talked to loved it, and when you talked to them about it, you just got a sense of that excitement.
You know, did people have an idea of what kind of problems they were trying to solve, or were they learning about it based on as they played with the technology?
I think very specific concept. I want to do this. I want to put this on the web.
Right.
I have this data. I want to get it on the web. And they're mostly motivated by that, by solving that problem. And then they found ColdFusion and said, well, this is greases this.
Right.
Just don't be done like later today. You know.
And then based on that, you're able to keep adding functionality to the product.
The irony is that what ColdFusion did in version 1 was basically one thing: data out of a database, data into a database. And to this day, 7 major versions, 10 years later, that's still predominantly what people use ColdFusion for. We did some analysis a while back to see what tags people use, and I think it was like 90+% of ColdFusion was 4 or 5 tags that have basically been there almost since day 1. So we keep adding lots of new features, lots of new functionalities, but the bottom line is people still need to solve the exact same problem they were solving 10 years ago.
Right.
And the real irony is that ASP, JSP, PHP, none of them have still gotten it as simple as ColdFusion had it 10 years ago. Just they haven't got it yet.
So then, what were some of the challenges in those early days? I mean, I'm sure there were growing pains, and there were, you know, with the excitement of the product growing so quickly, certainly it must have been challenging from a perspective of putting a company together and technology together.
Yes, it was. Yes, there was all kinds of dynamite blowing up all over the place.
Right. So there were late night explosions.
There was
and,
yeah.
All right, we're going to have to wait till later in the program. After the break, when we have a few more drinks, we'll come back.
Right.
How about you, Charles? Any memorable moments in the over the years of?
Too many to count, honestly. You know, the thing that was the most memorable for me in looking back at the whole experience, and this is not to suck up to all the people that worked at Allaire, but is in fact all the people I ended up meeting at Allaire. I ended up meeting a ton of great people, many of whom I'm catching up with today for the first time in a number of years. And more than anything, that is what's memorable, and that's what stuck with me, even more than ColdFusion itself, honestly.
Sounds a little suck-up-ish, but I think we like it. So then let's switch to sort of when ColdFusion went through its biggest shift, I think, in its history was when we made the shift to Java. When we left the C++ original platform, and you were really key in that process in driving the product from that point. So tell us a little bit about that. What was that like, and throwing out the original shell of the product and rewriting?
It was very nerve-wracking. The good news is Edwin and some other people had done some work ahead of me, and so when I showed up on the scene, there was actually something that would run a ColdFusion app, and so it didn't take that much faith to see what it could be. You could see this thing was going to work. It was just a matter of time. The scary part was there was a lot of ColdFusion to rewrite. There were like 80 tags and 250 functions, and there was, 9 or 12 months to get that done. And so you looked at that and you said, boy, we got to get that done, and now we've got Macromedia here, and Macromedia is very schedule-driven, and they really want it signed off on a particular day, and they're making me sign a piece of paper that says the date that I'm going to ship it. And they really don't want me to change that date. Okay, let's do this.
Well, I remember that, you know, in Allaire, we were really free with what we talked about with the product, right? We'd be in front of thousands of customers saying, yeah, 4 years from now, ColdFusion will be able to, you know, produce carrot juice or something. And Macromedia was a little more conservative, I think you'd say, about how much we could say.
Absolutely.
So it must have, you know, I remember those times as being a challenging shift in how we tried to deal with our customers and still get them excited about the technology when we were not necessarily able to talk about a vision that was far enough.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, the good news is, you know, we stayed pretty much customer focused. I mean, MX had some new features, but it mainly focused on making ColdFusion compatible and getting ColdFusion onto Java. And you can look at ColdFusion 7 and see that customer focus is not a problem here, so it's a good sign.
So you've kept up with the product too?
Absolutely. In fact, I would say probably not daily I write ColdFusion, but the website of the company I currently work at is written in ColdFusion, and I even am in there myself from time to time, writing a little bit of code.
And it's 7 in short, right?
It is getting to be 7 soon.
Those system administrators, I would have had it myself on day one if it was my choice. But
we need a salesperson to contact him up.
That's why we have some social time built into the program tonight to kind of make sure everybody's upgraded. Another story. Let's do another story, and then maybe we'll bring one more person up, and then I can have a couple of questions for you guys, and then we'll maybe take a break and bring more folks up. Sound good? So here's one. This is from Brandon Purcell, who's currently a principal support engineer here at Macromedia. Many of you may have encountered him in the years, very active in the community. So it was 1997, and I didn't even know what a web application was. As an Army officer, I was tasked with building a system to exchange information and so forth. I downloaded CF3 and printed out the hundreds of pages of documentation and read them on a long bus ride over the weekend. So apparently we had grown pretty far by CF3 to have hundreds of pages of documentation. The next week I started developing a prototype and had something put together in 2 weeks that we were able to use in a battle exercise. ColdFusion enabled us to build a web-based system that networked and so forth, tactical information, and across the division that started using it. I received emails early this year about it, and it was used during the Iraq War. So I'm not sure how I feel about a guy saying I knew nothing about web applications, and yet now it's being used in the Iraq War. But there you go. So if it wasn't for me stumbling across ColdFusion, I would have never gotten the job that I have today. In 2000, I decided it was time to get out of the Army because of his app, probably primarily. So I posted my resume on Monster.com. Allaire contacted me, hired me, and the rest is history. So obviously some lives changed there, hopefully all for the good for those folks who were involved with the use of the application. So, so let's move on to one other person. Let's see, I think next person I'll bring up is Simeonov, from another person from the early days. Come on up and have a seat, Sim. So Sim, have a seat and bring us up to speed on you, how you first came to know JJ and Jeremy and the team.
So this little place in St. Paul, Minnesota, when it gets very cold in the winter, called McAllister College. And I myself am born in Bulgaria in a nice valley where it's nice and warm and snow melts very, very fast. But after I bounced around the world, I ended up for school at McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota, a place I knew very little about, but I had gotten a full scholarship for, which kind of made it easy. And there, Jeremy Allaire was a year ahead of me. And with another friend, who Charles mentioned, Patrick Nizillo, we were Jer's friends. And through these guys, Jeremy and Patrick, I met JJ. Then, junior year, ended up getting an internship in the place that had given JJ an office because JJ was smart and they wanted to talk to him while he was working on ColdFusion. And that's sort of how the whole thing started. So once we left school, most of us basically joined Allaire because Jay was nice to offer us a job.
So obviously a little bit different than the way Charles got started, or were you courted with coffee and beer too?
I don't know about it. It was Brugger's. It was the interview spot.
It's
very lavish.
Monster.com of the Upper Midwest, I think.
You know, sign-up bonuses were really big. Bagel, cream cheese. I mean, folks in the Midwest are nice people, you know, simple people.
So tell us about. So what were you involved with the product in the early days, and you know, what
it was a little funny
when
I came on board. We could do some things with ColdFusion amazingly well. It was very easy to get data in and out of the database, put it on a web page. But if you couldn't actually add two numbers together. So if for some unknown reason, maybe you wanted to take a number and add 2 to it, it was kind of complicated. You know, temporary SQL statements, Ben might remember, and things of that sort. So during the discussion about me joining the company, JJ sort of mentioned that we may want to, you know, figure out some way how to manipulate numbers, things of that sort, maybe add and or in logical expressions. So when I actually joined and started looking at ColdFusion in more depth, I said, well, actually we kind of need to build a programming language here. We sort of don't just not have ways to add numbers together, we don't have a whole bunch of other ways to build really sophisticated applications. So this quickly evolved into JJ and me madly coding through the summer of '96, what basically became the transition of ColdFusion from a how do you get a database published to the web to how do you build really sophisticated web applications. So from 2.0 onwards, you could basically build anything you wanted to with ColdFusion. Before then, you still could, because in theory, there's a theorem in computer science which says that in theory, with any programming language, you can build anything. It's just darn hard.
So again, we continue to make hard things easy, right?
Absolutely.
So have you seen the language evolve over the years, and do you still recognize it from those early days of adding those first features?
I do. I still occasionally hack ColdFusion on weekends, and occasionally submit a bug or a feature request to Damon, to his disappointment. But no, I mean, it's actually interesting to think about ColdFusion, not in terms of the tags that you guys love so much, that help you solve very specific problems and are great, but also just in terms of the underlying concepts and principles behind the language, because there are a few things in ColdFusion that perhaps are less noticeable day to day, but are fundamental to making people productive with it. So with ColdFusion 2.0, we sort of invented this rubber room environment where you could just kind of throw stuff together as you manipulated data, and it all, most of the time, came out the way you intended it to. So you could actually take...
If it didn't, it was an undocumented feature.
Absolutely. It was by design, always. So for example, you could take the string, what is it today? A Wednesday, July 13th, 2005, 8:30 a.m., a piece of text, +1, and get, tomorrow at the same time. It's kind of non-trivial. I mean, there was actually no programming language at the time that would do this. And there were a lot of things like that just made it really easy to not think about the details of moving bits and pieces of information around, but just getting a job done. And that was, I think, the big contribution of 2.0 to the way people thought about building applications. And then in 3.0, we came up with custom tags. Custom tags, which are now a standard feature of ASP.NET and JSP and basically any page-based application environment, effectively enabled you to build complex, large applications, because CF includes just wouldn't cut it. And anybody who looked inside the bowels of Allaire forums, who was built on 1.5 technology, understands that. So you think about it, ColdFusion 1.0 effectively taught the world what it means to build a page-based dynamic application. And it was really nothing before ColdFusion that did this and did this well. 2.0 brought the rubber room. 3.0 brought the notion of sort of building large extensible applications. And then around 4.0 time, we really introduced another major innovation, which was WDDX. At about the same time, another technology called XML-RPC got released by some guys at Userland. Together, WDDX and XML-RPC were basically the precursors of what is now known as web services, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and all the major vendors are working on it. But it's basically how you use XML to get applications to communicate over the open internet and understand each other. And it was Allaire which sort of really commercially pioneered this, and Userland which commercially pioneered with XML-RPC, to the point where PHP, one of our major technology competitors, actually embedded WDDX in their product to do their own load balancing, session management. So again, it's another example where at Allaire, we basically led the way of the industry in thinking about a class of applications. And the guys that are left here now at Macromedia are doing this again with Flex, basically defining the new programming model for rich internet applications and tying it all together with the player and really bringing in very, very sophisticated and cool ways of building applications. And ColdFusion, of course, is going to be the easiest way to build those, as it has been the easiest way to build web applications.
So it's interesting that you mentioned about the structure of the language. I know a lot of people with ColdFusion have come from a lot of different backgrounds, both technical and non-technical. So you know, from a perspective of being a technologist, you know, did you ever have difficulties trying to figure out how do I give this powerful function to people in a way that sort of is contrary to my understanding of computer science concepts, or?
So that's a little bit of a tough question.
Bite you, I guess.
So people who like programming languages from a theory standpoint think CFML is a very ugly language, and we don't actually disagree with them. But we weren't trying to build a beautiful, pristine, academically correct language. We were basically trying to help you guys, ColdFusion developers and users, solve problems and solve them fast and basically get the job done. So we're willing to sacrifice purity, I'd say, and beauty in the abstract sense for practicality. And we also made a ton of mistakes, and you know about it because we broke the applications during upgrades and as we introduced new features, and you know, it was everything was happening so quickly. I think what helped was that all of us in the early days that were building the product were also web developers. All of us built applications, and that continued on for quite a bit on the Allaire development team. And most everybody working on ColdFusion was dabbling both at work and on the side in building applications. So if you screwed something up, you know, it ended up eating into your weekend time.
Do any of you remember some of those early sites, some early customers, some things that people were actually building with the product early on?
Everything, you name it.
Yeah.
Displaying weather images. I remember one of the first sites was what they told us they were doing.
Private joke.
They were private, secure weather images.
Right. I think one of the first sites was a jewelry store, RF Moeller Jeweler in Minneapolis. I mean, you name it, people were doing it. I mean, people were putting their courses on, the college professors were putting their courses online, and people were selling stuff and whatever. So.
Anybody else remember any other?
What was some of the fun stuff?
You know what I remember? I remember the day I was still working answering the telephones, and Visa called. And they called and they said, we were really interested in potentially doing a site license. But before we talked to you further, we wanted to just learn a little bit more about your company. And they said, so why don't you talk to us about, you know, how many people are working there? You know, give us, you know, we want to make sure you're going to be around. And I thought, you know, like, well, I can't tell them how many people are working here because there's two. You know, so I got to make it seem big. And so I said, well, you know, I knew maybe we were going to hire these other 8. There are 8 people working here. You can count on us. Needless to say, despite my follow-up calls, they didn't want the site license right then.
Although...
No, but don't tell them about that. Then they like came back at you and said, hey, are you in an office building? They were like, you're in your house, aren't you? And we were in an office building, right? A very nice office building, as it so happened. And you were like, we're in an office building. They're like, no, you're in your house. You are, aren't you?
Had you been 16 people in a house, that would have been okay, but 8 in an office building is...
Right.
Yeah, but apparently you didn't scare them too badly, because they did come back and they did buy it. And actually they ended up being the very first customer for training. When we first built the first ColdFusion training, the guinea pig run was their Visa, so you didn't scare them that badly, apparently. Yeah.
Well, I want to mention a really important application that Charles created called Shasta. Shasta was basically the internal Allaire systems. Pretty much everything that happened at Allaire either happened on email or on Shasta, and Charles built all of it from the ground up.
The very first application.
Yeah. But it was pretty amazing, because by the summer of '96, combined with some of the CF graph work that Peter Musilov, who's here, was working on, we could get literally up-to-the-minute order info by SKU, who bought what kind of ColdFusion, you know, subscription, license, pro, you know, developer, in colored graphs on the web. Now, when we grew and actually had a real CEO and investors and a real business and we're making tens of millions of dollars a year, we actually couldn't get that information. But we had bought a whole bunch of sophisticated enterprise applications to help us with our sales systems and ERP and all this stuff. We just didn't know what we were doing in real time. So, Charles, good job on Shasta.
First customer there. All right, so Christopher Christopher Wacker at Shared Dynamics in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania writes, in 1997, a few friends and I got together to expand my screen printing shop to the realm of the internet. The t-shirt business was pretty dead, so we were trying to use the internet as a source of income. None of us were really sure how to create a web application. I think I sense a theme here. And when we happened to mention to a client of ours who sold software titles, he suggested using Allaire ColdFusion 4. However, we were unable to afford the purchase price of $600. Okay, so everybody who complains to me about pricing, $600. Our customer traded shirts for the license, and within 3 months our site was up and running, thanks to t-shirt swapping. So happy birthday, ColdFusion. I'm sure glad we met. So the next person, one more person from the early Allaire days. Who I'd like to bring up for a few more reminiscences before we take a break. This was the person who was probably the person that I worked most closely with when I first joined. I was pretty intimidated by having this guy around, but he really did a great job at sort of bringing me into the Allaire family in those early days. Mr. Adam Berry. So tell us a little bit, join in, throw your story into the fray with all these.
About how I got started.
Yeah, so how do you come to join the guys, and what were you doing?
Yeah, basically, I turned down the job that Charles took. So JJ offered me the first job, and at the time I wasn't so clear on what it would mean to join a software startup in 1995. I regret that, actually, still. If anyone comes to you in that situation yourself and says, would you like to co-start a large software company? Well, at the time it wasn't large, but yeah, that's maybe something you want to do. Anyways, yeah, so eventually though, JJ did convince me to come aboard, so I started in 1996 with Jeremy.
And what were you doing in those in the beginning?
Well, it turned out that for the first couple months I was volunteering. And I volunteered for, I guess, about 4 or 5 weeks, and then I went into JJ's office and I mentioned, you know, that I was having trouble, you know, making rent and that kind of thing, and asked him if anyone else was getting paid. And I still, this time, was still not so clear on the concept of business. But JJ did actually say that other people were getting paid, and he offered to pay me, which was very generous of him, and he offered me some back pay for some of the time that I'd already put in. And so I accepted that, and that was pretty much how I got started. And unfortunately, he gave me my first paycheck and asked me to just hold on to that. I'd be so kind as to not cash that check. And then all the next 2 or 3 after. Yeah, that lasted for a while. Eventually, actually, I don't know if I should even say this story, but eventually those checks started to stack up, and I hadn't been able to cash any of them. So I convinced my dad to put a little bit of money into the company. And that I was able to cash those checks. Yeah, that guy.
So Dad was paying you for a little while.
That's right. And then I was also able to move off of Jeremy's couch.
And of course, you were involved when Allaire came out back into the Boston area.
Yeah, that was that turned out to be a good thing. That worked out really well for us.
How big was the company when the Cambridge office opened?
There were 15 of us. And we were all set on going to California. I mean, you know, 1990, I guess it was 1996, you have a software company, you go to California, that's sort of the idea. And at the time we went out there and we tried to find office space. And our real estate broker, he said, why don't you do this, come out, bring a checkbook, we'll drive up and down 101, and hopefully we'll get a phone call, hopefully we'll get there first, and hopefully you'll get a space. And it didn't look like that good an option, and JJ and I came out here to Boston, and we met a bunch of people in the industry out here, and we were just incredibly impressed with the talent and with the attitude and the people that we met, and we felt like we could come out here and start something that would be really big. And I think we made the decision in the course of about 3 days and had everyone moved here in about a month later.
Great. Did you lose anybody in the move? Was there anyone?
Not really.
No, we pretty much kept just about everybody.
That's great. And now you were involved a lot in the early conferences.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have fond memories of the Boston conference in '99 and then going to DC in Florida?
Yeah, you know, you asked that question earlier, how do you get a really passionate group of customers? And I think actually the answer to that's pretty simple, is you just make a good product. You know, I think that's actually what the most important thing you do. And there's a lot of like hype about viral marketing, a lot of crap they hear from marketing people. But and I say that being a marketing person. Yeah, but the truth of the matter is you just make a really good product. I think the second thing you do is then you actually answer the phone when people call.
That's Charles.
Yeah, that's right. So those were the two. That was sort of the key.
With the visa exception.
The key thing. Right. And then later, of course, you put a lot of money into marketing. So no, seriously though, I think developer conferences were great, and they were a big part of being able to have a chance to have real dialogue with everyone using the product, and also we had a lot of fun doing them.
And were other companies in the same space doing that at the time? Getting all the developers together?
You know, there was some stuff like that. I mean, I think we kind of keyed off of some of the stuff that Microsoft had done in the past, but I think we took a really different angle at it and tried to make the events really fun and interesting, as well as being educational and informative. But I think we were pretty early in the internet space doing that.
Yeah, I think over the years, a lot of stories, everything from marriages to divorces, I think, at DevCons.
Yeah.
The first ColdFusion conference was actually put on not by Allaire, but by the Colorado users group. And so thank you guys, you rocked. Jeremy and I flew out there. We had no idea what we were going to find, and found people from as far away as Asia and Israel who had traveled to Colorado Springs to hang out with a bunch of geeks and talk about ColdFusion. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, the user groups are another thing I think that was pretty unique, I think, to ColdFusion. Were you all involved with that? Did you go and speak at user groups and meet customers that way?
I think we all did at some point or another, but I mean, frankly, we just ran to keep up. I mean, that was pretty much most of the time. Was like, oh, there's a user group. Okay, wait, we need a program for that. Like, let's make that official. But really, it's people in the community who all the time were providing the leadership, and I think most of the time we just tried to follow fast enough to keep up with the good ideas and the work that was happening.
Yeah, and seeing these people that they volunteer their own time to put their own conferences together and do the user groups. I mean, I think that shows the dedication to it, and that's been there as long as I've been from it. So, all right, great. So we're coming up on a break, but since we have some of the key early folks and founders, I can take the mic, or actually I won't take the mic out. I'll see if anybody here wants to ask a question or two before we break with this group, and then move on to some other folks. Any questions for the founder and founding fathers, if you will? Sure.
The origin of the name?
Oh, okay, so the question is the origin of the name. Well, his last name is Allaire, so that's, I think, the origin of the name.
Well, the product name. Yeah. We had a few names prior to ColdFusion. We had Horizon as a name. I think we had, it was like WebDB was a name. That was really kind of stupid, but WebD, I mean, it was very literal, but okay. So we said, oh, we need something cooler than that. Horizon was a name. Prometheus was a name. We were going to go with Prometheus, and then the lawyer said, okay, yeah, Prometheus Pro Modem, that's a communications product. Could be confusion, you might not want to do that. It's like, oh, really? We need a name, we don't have a name. So, and we actually had already done the logo. The logo, the fist and bowl, was for Prometheus, because he was like fire, and so that was for Prometheus. It wasn't, but so we had the logo done. So we needed a name that was cool and hopefully fit the logo that we already had. And so it was me and a colleague of mine, not someone who worked with us, but we were sitting at dinner and we were just talking and names and names and names. And we really tried hundreds of names, and we just hit on. We liked fusion. We said, hey, fusion is a good word because it's fusing databases in the web. So we just tried to, we were just like, what could go with fusion? Web fusion, data fusion, this fusion, that fusion, fusion. All of a sudden, I think my friend said, ColdFusion. And we both just looked at each other and said, that's it. That's it. It's, it sounds cool. And it's fusion.
Already had the t-shirts printed up?
And it fit with the logo, and because it was, it was energy without heat, and it was like databases in the web without programming, so that's what we did. So that's the real story. So I don't know what other stories are out there, but
all the myths are now shattered.
That's exactly how we came up with the name. So
others. Anybody else want to ask a question? Yeah, in the back.
What were some of the reasons for moving from the C++ platform to more of a Java-based platform with ColdFusion?
Okay, so the question was, what was some of the thinking behind moving off of the original code base, the C++ base that ColdFusion was originally written on, and moving to the J2E platform? So I think the architect at the time.
As in most things, there are multiple answers to this question. There's sort of reasons that were good for you guys, and there were reasons that were good for us, and in the end, it sort of was good for everybody. Many of you know, because we told you this when we were shipping product, but we basically had to rebuild the engine of Allaire, ColdFusion, the product, several times through its life, about 4 times in total, while we were executing and running and growing the business and building a whole bunch of cool features for you guys to build applications with. We did it with the 2.0 release, we did it with the 3.0 release, we did it with the 4.0 release, and then we did it again with the 6.0 release. So the move to Java was sort of final generation. Why were we doing the first 3 generations of rebuilding? To basically get the product to be more scalable, more capable, and more robust. The reason why we had to do this is that nobody had this thing called an application server back when we started. So how do you do deployment, how do you manage runtimes, how do you do load balancing, how do you do security? All of this was left for us and everybody else in the market to figure out. By 2000, platforms had emerged, particularly the J2E platform had emerged, and a whole bunch of these concepts had reached some level of standardization. So from our perspective, we didn't want to do the work to keep reinventing the wheel and having to do basically all the work that all these other companies were doing ourselves. From your perspective, there was a lot more technology getting available for the J2E platform. A lot of people were getting trained on it. A lot of companies were making their products extensible via Java and via J2E. So if you migrated the CFML runtime to the platform, that not only could you choose to have a relationship, say, with IBM or BEA or Sun for deployment of ColdFusion, but you also had far better extensibility options in terms of picking, third-party components, how you want to talk to SAP, for example, which ColdFusion by itself didn't know how to do very well. So that was really the reason. And the enabling, we're thinking about it for a long time, and actually, I can tell you a story how it sort of happened. Soon after Allaire went public, we ended up with a bunch of cash. I was saying, okay, so we now need to think about how we leverage this capital and sort of approach some of the strategic opportunities and threats that face us. So JJ and I started having brunch together, weekend after weekend. And one of the things we focused on is this Java thing. Is it a threat or is it an opportunity? And the servlets, are they good or are they bad? And so at some point we said, well, it seems like an opportunity, you want to make it easier for the Java guys to build applications. So maybe, we should figure out how ColdFusion works with Java. Maybe we'll try to build this. So we said, well, maybe we'll get a couple of our engineers and throw them in and sort of have them work on it. This was happening during the, 4.0 release? Right. So everybody was a little busy. And so we were talking about this, talking to our team, waiting for when the people would get freed up to start working on this Java thing. And eventually, I think JJ said, well, screw it. Looked around, who were the best guys that knew about Java and the web, and it was the live software guys, Edwin Smith and the crew. So we just went out and bought them. And it was one of the best moves we made.
Great. All right, how about one more question? Anybody last question before we take a little breather? All right, well, that's good timing. That's a good spot here. So why don't we take a quick 5, maybe 10-minute break, and then we'll come back. We'll meet a couple more folks from the team, both from the past and the present and the future of ColdFusion. And we'll have cake and we'll have singing and all kinds of good stuff. And a video. For all of you trivia buffs out there who may remember a certain video. All right, thanks everybody. We'll be back.
No, this isn't the Mega Developer video, is it?
I have no idea.
Is it? No. Yeah, I do. It's the Mega Developer. That's right.
No problem.
I was like 10 in 1 hour, and there's like 20. Oh, okay.
You won't be able to get back.
You know,
These people are still trying
The following is a paid advertisement for the Teague Institute for Mega Development.
And I'm here with Kyle and Craig, co-founders of the Teague Institute for Mega Development. Kyle, the Teague Institute has done so much for developers. What inspired you and your brother?
Craig and I were just regular software programmers, and we suffered like regular developers. Long hours and difficult clients. We knew we had to find a better way. Together, we found that better way. That changed our lives, and we had to share it with other developers.
So you created Mega Developer 2000?
That's right, Amanda. The Mega Developer 2000 system combines a proven approach to personal growth with a powerful nutritional supplement. In just 3 weeks of listening to the Mega Developer 2000 motivational tapes and using the nutritional supplement will unleash the Mega Developer in you. You'll work harder, you'll code faster, you'll do things you never imagined.
Wow, it's an incredible story. But what's more amazing to me is the impact that Mega Developer 2000 is having on real developers.
I was just a regular developer. I didn't believe it could be better. But the Mega Developer 2000 systems changed all that. In just 3 weeks, I was 10 times more productive. My applications were more reliable, and the systems I built, they could scale in ways I never imagined. Thanks to Mega Developer 2000, I'm living my dream.
Just 6 weeks ago, I was a lowly IT manager here at Transnational Steel. Our web team was a mess. The board said, .com the company in a month. Executive management said it couldn't be done. But I put all my programmers on Mega Developer 2000. In just 3 weeks, we integrated 150 legacy systems and created a cutting-edge e-commerce system. Now, thanks to Mega Developer 2000, I run the company.
One night, when I was home, I saw Kyle and Craig on TV. Now, I had never even used a computer until I got Mega Developer 2000. Now, I am writing systems for the Pentagon and whipping my grandson at Quake. Thanks to Mega Developer 2000, I can say, screw Social Security. Code.
You know, it's amazing to see the impact Mega Developer 2000 is having on real developers. We wanted to understand the technology behind Mega Developer 2000, so we went to talk with Dr. Rashan, Chief Scientist at the Teague Institute. Dr. Rashan, Mega Developer 2000 is an incredible product. Now, as an expert on developer behavior and physiology, can you explain the science behind Mega Developer 2000?
Well, we've been observing developers for years under a wide variety of settings and conditions. We've observed them working, we've observed them playing, and we've observed them and our extensive scientific research is conclusive. Mega Developer 2000 is a revolution for the software industry as a whole and is the key to every developer's success in the new economy.
Wow. With the impact of technology and power Mega Developer 2000 delivers, is it hard to use?
No, Amanda, it's not. The Mega Developer 2000 system is straightforward and easy. So easy. The inspirational, motivational tapes help you work towards your goal, and a proven nutritional supplement integrates seamlessly with your regular meals. But change has to start with who, Craig? With you. So start today.
Mega Developer 2000. Sounds like good advice. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Everybody remember that? Who was there at that conference? This was the laser light shooting and the smoke machine and the lame children walking the stage. All right, so when we left off before the break, we had seen ColdFusion evolving from the early days in this really new way to change the way people thought about building web apps to a mature product that was about to go through a major transition with the architectural shift. So I'd like to invite one person up now who was involved with the early days as we were looking for where ColdFusion was going to go from the old code base to the new. Edwin Smith. Edwin, come on up. So Edwin, I hear a story that involved a trip to Java 1, some coast-to-coast flight, and a new way to think about ColdFusion. So fill us in a little bit.
That's right. Well, it actually started a little bit earlier than that. Did you ever see one of those movies where you see the same story told twice from 2 different perspectives? So you heard the one perspective. The other was started in '98. I went out to join a company called Live Software, and the first day I got there, Paul Colton, the founder of Live Software, is like, "Hey, we're going to work on JRun, but check out this idea. Like, we can do ColdFusion in Java. You know, just a couple lines of code, and look, it works." And that was like interesting. And so we built a prototype and put it on the web. And then like an hour later, we got an email from JJ, and that set together a chain of events that ended up with us moving into Boston and put it on ice. Went to Java 1, and a year later, we basically said, "Whoa, you know, this is still a good idea." And so we were so motivated by what was happening at the time and what was happening and the people we talked to at Java 1, so just started coding on the plane on the way back, got back to Boston.
And the rest was history.
And the rest was history, as they say.
So do you remember any big challenges? I remember being in some of those meetings where we were deciding how to keep the language versus the structure of Java.
Yep. Big challenges. I can't even begin to think of what was the big challenge. You know, the big challenge was the decision to keep ColdFusion ColdFusion, or the decision to go in the spirit of Java. You know, Java was more pure. ColdFusion is very sloppy, but very pragmatic. And we decided to stay true to exactly what ColdFusion was, you know, down to the last nth detail, which was a painful process, and it took a long time. It was very difficult. But we did it. We made it faster. We made it better.
And obviously, I think we did the right thing, and we're seeing that that JRun technology is under a lot of other products here at Macromedia today, right, too. Right? So it continues to be good effort. So that will bring to a person who today is still really closely involved with the evolution of the ColdFusion engine and the technology behind ColdFusion. The Director of Engineering for ColdFusion is Damon Cooper. Tell us a little bit about your background with ColdFusion and what brought you here.
So my background is actually a little bit different than the rest of the guys here. I came from a large company, EDS. Was working with PowerSoft actually, and then I joined Allaire. One of the things working at PowerSoft I realized was that 4GLs were very powerful, and they were very empowering to developers because they needed to get jobs done, even though there were pure languages around. You know, not having to worry about the finite details of releasing memory and so on was a very productive way to work. So one of the things that appealed to me when I came to Allaire was you know, this rapid application way of actually putting database data on a web page. It was just like, wow, it's cool. Now my first experience with it was, you know, I installed it and said you know, probably like most of us, hey, where'd it go? You know, there was no. It's like it took a little while to understand the concept of putting a live database data on the web page, understand how the CGI connection worked and everything. But my experience with EDS, you know, with the enterprise, you know, large enterprise scale applications that ran, you know, multinational companies, led me to believe that this was something that really could scale if we could get a chance to bring this to the large companies of the world. That this would literally transform the way that they did business, and that was something that. So when I interviewed with Charles, and Charles was like, "Oh, you know, some enterprise stuff, cool," and so it was like, yeah, you know. So I really, and I was on fire, and I said, look, you know, I think we can really do this. I think this is something that this is a place where the product can go, and so you know, over time, so I joined up and started the consulting group, and I was fortunate enough to be able to work with some of the early customers. I remember Tom back in the Cambridge days, so I'd call up and, hey Tom, I got a question about the product, and so Tom would work with me back and forth. On the customer sites back in early .com days. These are the days when customers had no idea of the concept of staging servers or anything else. It was just like,
what do you mean back in the day?
So this typically how this would work is the CEO would say, of the .com would say, you know, hey, I have an idea, and the developer would go, I can implement that in 10 minutes, right? And so then they would push it out live. And so then they would call us up and go like, hey, we have a question about how, you know, we just put out an ad on Howard Stern, and we have a question about the 40 million hits we just got. is it true we can't run this on our laptop? You know, so after working through a number of those issues, so I got involved with Tom. We actually produced together Service Pack 1, Service Pack 2 with 4.5.1. And then we went on to, I got involved with ColdFusion 5, and that was a great release. I enjoyed working on it. It was just a lot of fun. Customers loved it. We sped the performance up a whole bunch. You know, I'm a bit of a performance freak. Anybody who knows me knows that I like to see stuff go fast. You know, I got involved with Charles. You know, it was a great experience. Charles was kind of the positive guy, and I was the negative guy going like, no, it's still not ready to ship.
Ship it, don't ship it.
And so it was just it was a great experience working with some of the guys here before. I'm so honored to be a part of this team.
And continuing with the CF legacy and bringing us CF7 now. So a little bit about CF7, your proud moments with that release, of course. We're having great success.
When we shipped.
Yes.
That was number one. I guess the thing that's still, you know, that a lot of people say, you know, if you're not having fun doing what you're doing, do something else. My philosophy, you know, I think that's my philosophy as well. And the customers, I think, are the number one thing that keeps me here. More than anything, more than as amazing as the company is, and the people I work with are phenomenal. The customers are so darn excited about this product. They just, every time we put out a new release and we build something that they've asked for, seeing them actually put this to work is phenomenal. I literally get tears in my eyes sometimes. I talked to a woman at a conference one time, if I could just share this real quick. And this is a pivotal moment. This kind of nailed it for me, like what ColdFusion is all about. And she said to me, she said, you know, she was from some government agency. She had like a big backlog of apps that she was trying to write. And she said, if it wasn't for ColdFusion, there's no way I could do my job. Thank you so much for such an amazing product. And I couldn't take credit for creating the thing, you know, but for sure, I was sure happy at that moment to be part of the team. And so I realized at that moment, it's like, hey, if there's anything I can do to do this again going forward, I'm absolutely going to do that. And so, you know, the opportunity to do ColdFusion 7 came along, and we were done rewriting stuff, right? So after 6, you know, we had rewritten and a number of sub-releases after 6. We had rewritten a number of things, the installer and the product, and so it was time to innovate. And so it was, we were, you know, I guess I was at the right place at the right time, and with such an amazing team and such passionate customers. And we simply went out and we said, you know, what do you guys want to do? What problems are you facing in the world? And they're like, thank you for asking, as a matter of fact. And as you know, Tim was part of that. They told us a whole bunch of stuff that they wanted us to do for them, and so we did. So ColdFusion 7 is absolutely back to the roots, innovation for customers. 75% directly what customers asked for, and a little bit of cool stuff that we thought up as well added in for good measure.
Great. Well, I do notice that one other missing piece from our early days, now that we've gone full circle to CF7, we're going to have to circle back now to the early days. He's got his mouth full, but we waited patiently for Jeremy, who was held up on a flight, but we'd love Jeremy Allaire to come on back up. We went through the early founding fathers before the break, and it's great to have the other part of the Allaire namesake back up with us.
Thank you.
So ColdFusion is 10 years old. Did you ever imagine it would happen? Do you think we'd be here in this having an event?
Not really. I think I thought that what we were working on would be truly great. It would do great things. It was a great thing. And thought that it could, you know, live on with what the internet was doing, but in no way did I ever imagine that it would have the kind of success it's had. We certainly aspired to have this kind of success, but never imagined that it would actually have the kind of success it has.
Yeah, we certainly, you know, through the whole kind of theme of the night was we've been talking about how ColdFusion has changed people's lives, and how, you know, we get stories submitted from our users and we meet them all the time. People who have said, this little thing that I came across has really changed my life and changed my ability to do things. So it was great to have you be part of that early on.
Absolutely, yeah. So it certainly affected my life a lot. But quite seriously, I mean, I'm the prototypical customer in a sense. Started as a web developer and had problems building web applications because stuff to do it back in 1994 was terrible and difficult. And the initial and core innovations that JJ created allowed me to do things that I had envisioned were possible with the web, but which were much more too complex, or too complex to accomplish with the tools that were there. So it certainly transformed what I could do, and then certainly helped get me motivated to try and make it a success for the whole world.
and I know you've continued to do other innovative things in technology. Have you still kept up with ColdFusion? Are you still watching what's been going on?
Yeah, so I'm on the beta lists of every release and on the Merrimack beta right now, and just like to read what people are saying and look at what people are doing, and I'm always amazed at, it seems like the frequency that I see ColdFusion sites on the internet is actually growing. It's unbelievable that they continue to grow and thrive like that. So I pay a lot of attention to it. And of course, I have a new business I'm trying to get the team to use various components of Macromedia
we've got a
software.
couple of upgrade subscriptions that we're working with the panelists who are up before the break. So
I see.
We'll get a wrap up over to talk to you after. Good. Great. So the first 10 years have finished. We're heading into the second 10 years. I'll give one last customer how ColdFusion changed my life story. And this is one that I think obviously is really life-changing. So back at Max 2001 was down in Florida, in Orlando, at one of the Disney resorts, and there was a hot tub out there. And as sometimes happens with conferences, people socialize a bit after the day's events and maybe have a drink or two. And word started to filter through the entire conference that the girl, the Playboy chick, the girl from Playboy, was in the hot tub. And suddenly the poor concierge was rushing to explain to everyone how to get out to the hot tub. But there was one ColdFusion engineer shirking his duties, throwing caution to the wind of his 8 a.m. session the next day to rush out to the hot tub to meet the Playboy chick. Which, of course, led to a long night in the hot tub with any number of customers. And many feature requests. It was all research. Which led to a couple more years of how he put it, avoidance, denial, and rejection, leading up to a surprise trip out to Chicago back in January of 2004, which led ultimately to this May, the announcement of the engagement of our ColdFusion engineer, Mike Neimer, and Andrew Gronowski. All thanks to ColdFusion. So anybody who says that ColdFusion doesn't change lives, you just have to be in the right hot tub at the right time. All right, so I'll take an opportunity. We'll do just a couple more questions. If there were any questions that any of you folks had, maybe for Jeremy or for any of the other folks or founders. Any of the last questions or thoughts or best wishes or offerings? All right, well then, on to the cake. Shall we do a little birthday cake? All right. Are we supposed to wheel this, Amy, or we're going to pull it forward? All right, we're going to just do this. So I've got a light here. Here, let's put it. There we go. So everybody can see. Look at this. It's the kind of a Dr. Seuss theme going here.
Go ahead.
And you now go down in his job. Hey, I got the You got the pretty much in.
You get to cut it. There we go. All right, everybody's saying I'm going to turn my mic off. Well, Amy told me to sing. Amy told me to sing. Ben, you come up and sing. No.
You should make Amy sing. You should make Amy sing. You should make Amy sing. Amy.
Come on, Amy. You wanted to sing.
You don't want me to sing, so.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, ColdFusion. Happy birthday to you. All right, everybody else, you guys pull it out. All right, so we're going to it's back on. I think we're going to cut the cake, and all of you out on the breeze, sorry, we're going to eat it. But I want to thank everybody. everybody. I really appreciate both the folks who were out via Breeze and the user group community. Keep up the great work in the user groups. Continue supporting ColdFusion out in the field as we continue to innovate the product. Thank you to everybody here in Newton, both people who have been involved in the product from the past, people who are customers and users and just supporters. Thanks for coming out. Final comment about CF7. ColdFusion 7's out there and doing great. We really want you to go out and try it if you haven't yet. And as innovative and exciting as ColdFusion 7 is, the next release and the release after that and the release after that and the release after that that'll take us through to the 20th birthday party are going to continue to do that. So keep giving us the feedback, keep supporting the community, and we'll see you in another 10 years. Thanks, everybody.
Did you actually read that? I did. Go low. I haven't seen it. They're going to start yeah, go ahead. Face to face since 2000. I used to think these. That works.
Oh, and that polymorphism email, ignore it. The email you're saying that there was some picture on the blog from Macromedia saying that you can't have multiple functions with polymorphic functions inside of CFC because it's on the fly. And then I wrote something to you directly saying, well, you said this and this.
Like running the team with
Tom really runs the team.
Yeah, the thing is I get a lot.
You're pretty famous.
oh yeah, did you just tell me about married?
That's totally broken.
I'm the official historian today, you see.
Yes. Well, I'm here so I'll remember because I remember everything.
So I know.
I can tell you stories about the 1.0.
Yeah.